Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Eat. I am very excited to welcome you to today's episode. It is Sunday morning. I am super comfy, cozy right now, getting over some sort of sinus, head cold, some situation, right? So bear with me on the congestion that you might be able to hear my voice. And I have my electrolytes and a warm matcha with me. So talk about an ideal situation. This is exactly where I am meant to be right now. I wanted to record this from my couch and get really into my comfy cozy, but I find that the audio is not as great when I do it in my living room with the ceilings being as high as they are versus in my office where the ceiling's lower. Something about the acoustics, I'm sure. So we are at the desk and we are diving into 30 things that I've learned in 30 years. Now, I was going to split this up into 2 episodes, and then I decided, you know what, let's try and condense it. So bear with me here because I can talk, and I'm really excited to expand on these, but I won't spend too much time on any one of them because I know it can get long. All right, the lengthiness of the episode is something to be considered. So we're going to be exploring 30 things I've learned in 30 years in honor of my 30th birthday this week. Now, these reflections are not limited to just health and wellness. I'm going to be covering reflections related to life and relationships and so forth. So thank you for being here. Enough said, enough introduction. Let's get into 30 things that I have learned in 30 years, and welcome to the table. Let's eat. Welcome to Let's Eat. I'm your host, Emily, holistic health coach and self-proclaimed wellness enthusiast, here to meet you at the intersection of physical and mental health, the exact location where optimal wellness lies. This podcast is meant to explore all areas of mind and body wellness, designed to offer you the integrative knowledge, behavioral strategies, and mindset shifts necessary to uplevel your health and feel better today. We'll explore nutrition, sleep, movement, self-care and stress management, habits and routines, gut health, mental health, and more. I am so happy that you're here. Welcome to the table. Let's eat. So my first reflection from the past 30 years would be that our thoughts create our reality. Now, this is something that I learned of probably just within the past 3 years, I would say. And this largely resonates with the concepts that are within cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a very big modality in the world of mental health, in the world of clinical work, and a lot of what I did when I was a therapist centered around this. And it's essentially this concept of how our cognitions impact and determine our behaviors. When we're having certain thoughts, that's going to generate certain emotions, and then that's going to determine how we respond, how we behave, what our actions look like. So when you think about that on a more granular level, you realize, wow, my thoughts have a big impact on the choices that I make and the outcomes that take place in my life. And what's unfortunate is 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of them are repetitive. I've said this statistic before, and I think it's a really important statistic for us to consider, because if our thoughts create our reality and we're working upstream against the statistic that so many of them are negative and a lot of them are repetitive to the point where we don't even realize we're having them, what does that then mean for our actions and our outcomes? So one of the very best things that we can do is start to build awareness around the thoughts that we're having. And this is something that I've absolutely cultivated in my own life. It's a work in progress always, but I think even further, the work that I do with clients, being aware of how our thoughts impact us and that they're not just meaningless, that while thoughts are automatic, that's one of the most important pieces to this puzzle, probably could have been its own reflection on my list. Thoughts are automatic, so they come to our brain no matter if we wanted them to or not, but they're not always rational. Thoughts are not necessarily factual, they are just thoughts. And so really being able to spend that time understanding what thoughts are most present for us and how are they determining how we feel and then subsequent actions, this can change your life. Hands down, no doubt about it. it can change your life, but it does require that microscopic thinking to really be aware of them, especially when our brain has been hardwired in a certain way where those neural pathways from the world of neuroplasticity, how our brains can be formed and they're malleable, right? They're plastic, for, I guess, lack of a better word. We can actually change that hardwiring. And even if it's been decades of the way we've thought, whether it's been from childhood or adolescence or whatever the case is, we actually have a lot of control in reformulating the way our thoughts are structured. So fascinating, but takes incredible self-awareness. But the first and foremost, one of the biggest takeaways from the past 30 years that has changed the way I see my health, my life, my business, and more is that thoughts create our reality. Secondly, this is a little bit more lighthearted. Stop touching your skin. Stop picking at your skin. Stop touching your skin. Oh my goodness. When I dealt with my skin issues back in my early 20s, that was a big, big issue for me. And I pay for it now, right? My skin quality and, residual scarring and so forth is something that I have actively worked on since my skin has really cleared up. So this is for anyone who has a tendency to pick your face, because that I think is a very common issue, especially for women. Stop doing it. Just stop. Just stop doing it. Okay? That's all I'm going to say on that one. All right? Just stop doing it. Nextly, the whole body is connected. Now, you had to assume that this was coming at some point in this list, okay? The whole body's connected. For so many years, I did not see the body this way. I did not consider it, and this is largely a byproduct of cultural conditioning, right? How our healthcare system doesn't see it as a whole body, and that's where we really start to formulate our understanding of health. So if our culture is not acknowledging it as a whole body, then why would we? Unless we started to think in an alternate way of thinking, which obviously took me probably 25 years to get to this point. The whole body is connected, and in order to really heal, in order to really understand your body and understand, the interconnectedness of our physical and our mental health, the interconnectedness of our organ systems, our gut, our liver, our brain, all of the things, we have to start looking at it holistically. We have to start looking at it as a whole body. Otherwise, you are targeting certain areas and you're never going to see how one influences the other. You're not going to be able to get that full picture. So instead, you're going to be putting out fires in different areas as opposed to seeing how they all influence each other. So super, super important. Number 4, you are your own best doctor. Now, this one is huge. This one is so, so huge. We know ourselves better than anyone. And unfortunately, I think we put a lot of the responsibility into our healthcare system, but no doctor can experience your experience. No one can experience your experience. So no one knows your symptoms. No one knows the smaller details of what it is that you're experiencing. And so no one can invalidate that for you because you know your body best. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear from clients is they feel invalidated by the healthcare system. And a lot of it's because, doctors are telling us it's all in your head, or they're not really listening to their patients. And that makes us feel like we're crazy or that we're not experiencing these things, because I think we put these doctors on pedestals because they do have higher education, which, that's not something that I'm trying to diminish, right? I know and I respect that, but you cannot know my body more than I know my body. And that goes for everyone, because I know my body more than you know my body, and you know your body, and that's fine. I'm getting myself confused here. But what's most important is that you are doing what's best for you. And if you're feeling like you're not getting the support that you need because the doctor isn't acknowledging this, then you need to find someone else. You need to find a new doctor, because your experience is very real. And how many people feel as though they're not getting the help that they need, or are just dismissing these subclinical symptoms because their doctors are. And so they feel as though, well, if the doctor knows best, then I must be wrong. And that's not the case. I think I read a statistic. Actually, I want to look this up because this is really important. All right, I had to take a quick break there to find what I was looking for. Dr. Robin Berzin, she's the founder of Parsley Health. I'm going to read this excerpt from this article. Dr. Berzin was astounded by how many women felt both like they didn't have a clear diagnosis for what was ailing them, roughly 67%, and that they were dismissed by their healthcare provider. 50% said they were quickly prescribed Band-Aid medication without getting to a root cause. And this statistic will be unsurprising to many women. 15% had previously been told their complaints were all in their heads. Now, I'm sure that is only one statistic of many out there of women and men feeling as though they aren't getting the support that they need. And this obviously opens up the door to a lot of other concerns and issues and complexities, right? So I don't want to get into that. But just in general, you are your own best doctor. Listen to your body. And if you're not getting the answers and the support that you need, go elsewhere. Next, you cannot control your stress. You can choose how you respond to it. Now, this one is huge. We cannot control a lot of the stressors that come in life. We can't. And that's really unfortunate. But that does not mean that we can't choose how we respond differently to it, which can make a world of a difference. Now, you hear me talking about stress all the time. I must say this to clients multiple times a day. You cannot control your stress, but you can choose how you respond to it. Now, there's a lot of stressors that we can choose to address that are in our control. The foods that we're eating, the movement that we're choosing, the sleep that we're getting, reducing our toxin exposure, all of that is reduced stress on the body. But for stressors like financial stress or personal familial stress or occupational stress, whatever the case is, all of this is largely out of our control to varying degrees, depending on who you are and what your life looks like. But your response to it really matters. Your perception of it matters. Stress is the perception of real or imagined threat. Right? I butchered that definition, but it's something like that. So when we think about it, it's all about how we perceive something that matters. That's where the weight comes from. So you have to be willing, and this kind of ties into my initial thoughts create our reality. You have to really start to think about, all right, I could freak out over this. I could, throw a temper tantrum around this. I could let this ruin my day, my week, my month, my year, whatever the case is. How can I respond a little bit more productively to it? And this is not meant to be like a toxic positivity, life is great, I have no cares in the world. Not at all. This has everything to do with just perception and being able to either see it in a more positive way or to, kind of call ourselves out a little and maybe rationalize with ourselves a bit to say, okay, is this really the end of the world? Is this really something that I need to be so worked up around where it's ruining, my whatever, right? You understand what I'm saying? Or, can I be more productive in response to this? Okay, this negative thing happened or this stress is here. What can I do about it? Can I change something about it? There's so many different ways to perceive something. I think we get so caught up in this negative thing happened or this is stressing me out. And we kind of take on this victim mentality to some extent. And don't get me wrong, there are times in life that are really hard. Life is hard, and sometimes life is really unfair. But we can also choose to respond to certain stressors in life that, number one, makes it a little bit less dramatic on the body, less stressful on the body, but also changes the way we see something so that it's not so influential on us and our lives as a whole. So you can't control stress, but you can choose how you respond to it. Next, let's talk skincare. Emily, put on some SPF. Please put on some SPF. I think there are no other words to this one. This is number 6. Wear your SPF. I regret not being more intentional about putting on SPF, and now that I'm older, I'm very on top of it. And it's not just direct sun exposure at the beach. It's every single day putting on SPF on my face and being willing to protect my skin. Now, I could also meet this with get out in the sun. All right, this is kind of like two-pronged. Wear your SPF, but get your sunlight, because we know sun is our master regulator. So using protection in the sun is important. especially, while on vacation or down the beach when you're getting, intense sun exposure. Not burning is really important, but then also finding a healthy balance in terms of getting sunlight, because we know how valuable it is to our hormones, to our circadian rhythm, and more. Okay, so wear your SPF, cover your skin, cover your face. That's something that I am really intentional about now, especially as I've kind of gotten to a point where my skin is a priority in terms of just healing the damage that has been done to it over the course of the past several years. I am very intentional now about my SPF, but then also getting my sunlight and my sun exposure to help support my quality of sleep, my hormones, and more. Number 7, you don't need to drink to have fun. Now, I think this just encompasses alcohol as a whole and what I've learned. I think I outgrew alcohol many years ago, many years ago, but I'd still incorporate it and drink because it was just the social norm. It's what all of my friends and people my age were doing. But every time I'd wonder, why do I do this? Like, I don't like this. I don't care for this. My body doesn't respond well to this. And it was more the mental health impact that it had than it was the physical health. Now, I don't feel well physically after drinking, but the anxiety that I'd have the next day, that became more and more real as I got older. So I feel like I got this out of my system, especially 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Had my time. And then I turned 21, and obviously 21, 22, 23, I, did what I had to do as a 21, 22, 23-year-old. But then as I got into my mid-20s, and now I'm 30, and as I've moved out of my late 20s, it is something I probably could go without for the rest of my life, and I would be very, very content with it. Very content, and it would be totally okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I love red wine, and I've said this before. I love a good tequila drink. Those are my favorites. But to me, the collateral impact that it has is just not worth it. Now, I did learn over a year ago that I have issues with detoxification, and I have a greater need for support in this area, which is not something I learned up until recently. So it makes me wonder, maybe it's the reason why I have trouble with alcohol, because I can't just have one glass of wine and feel okay the next day. I feel off. I don't feel well. So I'm wondering if that's the case. And that's obviously something that I've invested in a whole lot just within the past year and a half is, supporting my liver, supporting my gut even further, right? Supporting the things that I need to do in order for these areas to operate and function properly. But it's kind of furthered the emphasis of not drinking because of the fact that I know that my body just has issues with it. So I think this has been an ongoing reflection about alcohol's role in my life and just my relationships as a result of it. But I've definitely decided that it is just not for me. On occasion, yes, still working through all of that. But for now, I can say confidently that it's just not my thing. And from a health perspective too, I mean, it only benefits me. There's just no benefit to me as much as there is a benefit to not. So it's kind of a no-brainer to some extent, but just something that I've learned over many, many years. This has been years and years and years, learning the hard way and more reflection and better choices and so forth to really just kind of get to the point that, yeah, I can do without. Number 8. Sleep is your superpower. Now, I sound like a broken record, but this is me talking to my younger self who did not feel this way or didn't realize the value of sleep, because now I am a sleep fan through and through. I prioritize my sleep like I prioritize nothing else. I love to sleep. I love to sleep. I love it. And it's not that I'm sleeping all the time, hours and hours and hours. I just love getting to sleep and getting quality sleep and feeling refreshed. And something that I think through my 20s and even through my late teens was the fact that I either didn't care to sleep or I just wasn't getting quality sleep for whatever reason, whether it was because I was drinking or because I was working late and I just didn't want to go to sleep once I got home. So I was up really late, or I was out and about, which I don't regret any, times I was out having fun with friends and whatnot. But staying up till like 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, it gives me anxiety just thinking about that now. Okay. So it's just interesting because at the time, obviously I wasn't thinking about my health and I wasn't concerned. And that's just what you do when you're 17, 18, 21, 22, whatever. That's what you do, right? You do what you want to do and you stay up late or you stay up till the early hours of the morning, and it's considered fun. At the time, that's fun. That's a lot of fun, I guess, at 21 years old to be doing that. But now I realize how valuable sleep is and how much we should be more aware of it, how much we should be taking it more seriously, essentially, is really recognizing the impact that sleep has from a health perspective, both mental and physical. And it's not, like I said, it's not to say that I would go back and change anything, but I've learned over years, wow, sleep actually has a lot of value, and it's really such a foundational part of our lives and our health and our day. And that is something that I will continue to talk about and continue to enforce and continue to emphasize because I've now learned of its importance. Number 9, you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. You can't out-supplement a bad diet. This one is big because I think a lot of us buy into the idea that we can. I think it's a lot of, a byproduct of the fact that we live in a very medication-focused country. So there's a pill for every ill, as they say. And so with that said, we kind of translate this to the supplement world as well, that, I can just take a supplement and bypass the nutritional importance, right, of being able to choose foods that are nourishing and have that solid foundation first, and then incorporate a supplement if it's necessary. Because what we do in our healthcare is we don't look at our diet, we just prescribe medication. So it seems to not really matter, but that's not the same for supplements. And so wasting your money on supplements, and probably low quality supplements, you really have to look at the quality and the integrity of the brand, is not necessary or productive until you look at the foundation of your diet and what it is that you're eating and what you're doing more regularly from a nutritional standpoint, as opposed to let me just incorporate in the supplement and keep everything else the same. So you can't out supplement a poor diet. I definitely tried to do that when I was in my probably early 20s, I would say. I don't even think I was taking many supplements in my late teens, but into my 20s, I definitely tried to do that. I definitely tried to do it, and not consciously. I didn't know that wasn't productive. I didn't know that wasn't going to work. I thought it would work. I had to learn in retrospect, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. Nextly, consistency is key. This is something that I think is really cliche, but this is really important for us from a health perspective, because I think we expect quick results in a lot of areas of our health. And what's really important and what really matters is just consistency over time versus intensity in a short amount of time. Instead of I'm going to go really, really hard for 4 weeks, it's how can I establish a habit over the course of 6 months to get the results in a more healthful, more sustainable way, versus I'm going to, commit to this wholeheartedly and really, really invest in it for 4 weeks and hope that I get the outcome that I'm looking for. Now, that's not to say that that's not still important, right? That we should be, invested in our health and wellness over the course of time, regardless of what time period it looks like. But to be most effective and to be most sustainable, I believe it's a consistent effort as opposed to just, a short period of powering through or powering at a certain diet or a workout or whatever the case is. It's about the consistency piece. And so I think, with this all or nothing thinking, which a lot of people fall under, is if they're going to the gym and they're committing to 5 or 6 days and they miss one day, they abandon ship thinking that one day will completely, shatter their progress. But if you think about it, it's about the consistency factor. It's not about that one singular workout that's going to determine everything. It's about the fact that you've gone 5 days. Maybe you miss one day, that's fine. But if you go the next day and say you go another 5 days and then you miss another day, you still have those 10 days of consistent effort with only a few days that you maybe needed a rest day or you took off or whatever the case is, that's contributing to your larger goal, as opposed to I'm just going to stop entirely and then, go 6 weeks and then recommit. There's no consistency there. So I really want to encourage you, if this resonates with you, I'm glad, because I'm here to help and I'm here to support. But it's really about the consistency. And that's what I think is really important when we're looking at things from a diet versus a lifestyle, is looking at things on a grander scheme of, if I'm going to the gym 3 times a week consistently for a year, that's better than going for 7 days a week for a month and then not going for 2 months and then going 7 days a week for 2 weeks and then not going again for 3 or 4 months. And then, you know what I mean? Like, you have to see it as, I would much rather see you commit to where you're at and go at that consistently, as opposed to I'm going on this yo-yo roller coaster of I'm going really hard for a short period of time and then I'm taking off for an extended period of time, then I'm going hard again, and back and forth. And this was a big part of my lifestyle, which I've shared on plenty of times, is, there would be this yo-yoing of going, and I'm referring to the gym. I think that's probably like the best example for me personally, but this can be relevant to a lot of different areas of health, and not only health in life, right? But for me, I was going to the gym regularly and going hard for weeks at a time, but then I'd stop for like 6 months and then I'd go back, or I just wasn't in a rhythm. But now I feel like I've worked out consistently for an extended period of time, that I am seeing results, I'm maintaining results, and it's more organic in my routine, as opposed to it feels like I'm trying to smush a bunch of progress in a matter of a couple weeks, which we know is just not feasible. It's not sustainable, nor is it really healthy for your body. That can be really harmful and promote injury. So something to consider. Consistency is key. Now, number 11 is friends come and go. Now, this one has definitely been a learning experience over the course of the past many years. And I grew up having quite a bit of trouble in my elementary school. I think I shared about this in my initial episodes of my story. Without going into too much detail, I dealt with a lot of bullying in middle school and elementary school. So I think my perception of friendships was really impacted by that experience, because what we know, and this could be a reflection in and of itself, is our early experiences really determine the way we see the world later in life. Whether that's within our dynamic within our family, our relationships, just experiences that we have as children really impacts us later in life. So I think this concept of friendship has always been kind of challenging for me because of those experiences. But I think the hardest lesson is not only friends come and go, but just relationships come and go, and people come in and out of your life, and that's how it goes. And I think that's been really hard for me to let go of different relationships or friendships that kind of have organically made their way out of my life. But because that was just the timing and the way that my life was going and their life was going. But it's just interesting, because I think you have friendships where you think the person's going to be in your life forever, or, you think that they are, so important to you at one point in your life, and then they're no longer in your life just because you've either outgrown each other or whatever it is. And it's just a weird experience to think about that at one point in time, a friendship was so important to you, or they were such a big part of your life, and now you are in a different space of life, different season of life, and it's just not the same. So I think that's something that I've learned and I've kind of accepted. It's like, that's how life goes, is different periods of life, phases of life. You're going to have different people in your life, and people are going to be more prominent in your life. And then it's okay when that also changes. That's okay when one of you, two of you, both of you move on, or whatever the case is. So friends come and go, and that's okay. That's a healthy part of life. You can be grateful for the time that you spent with them, and there was a reason for them in your life. And, moving forward and allowing new energy and your life to continue the way that it's moving is, I think, one of the healthiest things you can do instead of fighting against the change. Number 12, there are many moving parts to health. Now, this comes from an experience in my early 20s into my mid 20s. I think what we don't understand is there's not one singular food that's going to change everything. It's not one type of workout. It's the marriage of so many different things that are going to impact your health, both mental and physical health. And I think that this is something that is really hard for us to conceptualize and to wrap our head around, and it feels a little bit overwhelming. I think I could be honest with you. Now that I feel I'm in a spot where I feel confident in what I do, I feel otherwise, but trying to educate someone on this, and I'm very intentional about this when it comes to my work with clients, because I don't want it to come across as being too much for someone. But there's so many components that make up our health, and there's not one single thing that's going to transform it. And so it's just about looking at these different areas and making improvements in these specific areas so that they can kind of all come together in a symbiotic way, I guess is the best way of putting it, right? That our sleep qualities improve, that we're moving more regularly, because the pillars, they all work together. Nutritionally, exercise, stress and sleep and so forth, all of it's interrelated, and each one of them will impact the next in a negative and or positive way. And so instead of putting too much of a focus on one singular area, look at it as a big picture. Look at it as, how are these all interconnected? How are they all interrelated? And what are the things that I need to invest in order to see it as these moving parts? Because I think I spent way too much time just focusing on certain areas. It's kind of like just trying to exercise for the sake of getting a six-pack, just doing core workouts. But it's not just about that. It's about strengthening all other areas of the body, and it's about looking at my nutrition. It's not just this singular focus. It's going to be, there's so much more to it. It's kind of like, people who, I'm just incorporating this supplement, but not changing anything else. You have to look at all these other areas and how they impact the root cause, right? How they impact what it is that you're working on in order to move the needle most effectively. So I hope that this is clear to you. There are many moving parts to health, and it's not just like a singular area that we need to focus on. It's a big picture. There's many pieces to this puzzle, and that's why it's ongoing. And it takes time. But the second you can kind of pull your view out and look at it more at a bird's eye view, you're going to be able to see, okay, how is this piece influencing that piece, and how can I do this in benefit of that? And, looking at it more holistically, as I mentioned before, is really, really important. Number 13, don't put anything off for later. This is something that one of my favorite podcasters, Haley Hoffman Smith, talks about, and I love it. Don't put anything off for later. How often do we put things off for later? Seeing a friend, or doing a task that we don't want to do, or procrastinating a workout. If we can start to cultivate the self-discipline to do things now, think about how much more we would get done if we stopped putting things off and we did it now. Now, this is not only from like a self-development, personal growth perspective, but also just as it relates to friends and family and, getting together with that one person that you've been putting off for months, or you can't seem to find the time that works, or calling a family member, or, whatever it is, all of these things that we don't have time for, or we procrastinate, or we put off. And I think at some point in time, there's not going to be a later. I know that sounds like really deep, but that's the truth. There isn't going to be a later for any of those examples that I gave. So instead of procrastinating or putting off the things that we need to get done, do it now. Don't put it for later. Don't say you'll get it done later. Do it now, and see how your life will change as a result of that. Not only from, like I said, a personal development, and this is really kind of what resonates most with me, is not putting off things that I want to do just because it's not the right time, or I'm not ready, or I just don't feel like it. Really starting to look at it through more of like a growth lens, and recognizing that, right now is the best time to do anything that you want to do. And there's so much value that can come of it. And then not only that, like I had mentioned, from like a relationship, friendship standpoint, don't procrastinate, don't put off these things, because you just never know. You just never know. And putting things off for later, and, God forbid something happens, or, whatever the case is, you won't have that opportunity again. So don't put things off for later. I love that. I think it's a good reminder when we want to delay something, or we want to avoid something, to kind of kick it into gear and say, all right, I'm going to get it done. Next, just because it's new or hard doesn't mean it's wrong. You can do hard things. This is number 14, I think, is my favorite out of all of these, because of the fact that because of this concept, I've been able to do a lot of things that were and still are very hard. And I think something that I love to say, and I remind myself of, is just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean it's not something I should do. We can literally do anything. We can literally do anything. Anything that we want to do, we can do. And I think this concept really illuminates what I've done with my business, what I've done with the work I'm doing, what I've done with where I'm living, the list goes on and on and on. There's so many things that I saw as too hard, too overwhelming, too confusing, I don't know how to do that, to this, that, and the other thing, right? Like, so many things that I looked at as like, how am I going to do that? I don't know what I'm doing. And I've really gone into so much, especially within the past 2 or 3 years, not knowing and just doing and figuring it out along the way. And that, I think, is one of the best things that we can do. Obviously, be aware and be don't take that too far, right? And know when things become risky or dangerous, or, whatever the case is. But I think one of the best things that we can do is really put forward energy into things that are overwhelming or intimidating, and not let that stop us from doing it. Doing it scared, I think, is the best thing. Like, you can have anxiety about doing something, and you can do it anxious. You can do it scared. You can do it nervous. You can do it not knowing what's on the other side. And that's exactly kind of the philosophy that I've adopted, especially, like I said, in the past 2 years, I would say. And it is one of the best things that I've ever done. It's been scary, but it's been so rewarding, and I will continue to lean into that concept with everything that I do, because I know how valuable it is and how, rewarding it can be on the other side. And it's also, a potential for lesson, right? Like, for a lesson in life. If it's not as rewarding as we hoped, we learned from it, we grew from it. And we can't say we didn't try. We can't say that we didn't, go for it, because, what's the worst that could happen? And I think at the end of the day, life is too short to pull back on things that we want to do because we're scared. That is absolutely my thought process, is we can do so much. And I think fear and anxiety is what holds us back. And we can do things in fear. We can do things with anxiety, and we can still survive, and we can get through it, and we can be successful, and we can still do it. We can still do it scared. I I can pursue my dream and feel scared at the same time. That's a dialectic. It's when two opposites exist at the same time. There's a difference between that sentence of I can pursue my dreams and I'm scared while doing it, right? Or I can pursue my dreams and I'm scared versus I can pursue my dreams, but I'm scared. But brings in this level of hesitation of, well, maybe I shouldn't do it because I'm scared. But I think that's one of the worst things that we can do from a personal growth standpoint. So just because it's new, just because it's hard, doesn't mean it's wrong. We can all do hard things. So go do some hard things. Next, opening 6 store credit cards just because you're pre-approved doesn't mean that you should. This is so specific. But at 19 years old, I thought because I was pre-approved for all these store cards that I should get all these store cards, and that is not the case. Okay? So don't do that. I mean, if you want to do that, you can. But just because you're pre-approved doesn't mean that you should get it. Pre-approval is their way of trying to get you roped in, right? Like, oh, I'm pre-approved. Like, I should totally do this. No, Emily. No, you shouldn't. Okay? Next, antibiotics don't work in isolation. All right, I am beating a dead horse with this one. Antibiotics do not work in isolation. They clear out our microbiome along with the pathogen or whatever it is that we are intending to wipe out. And there needs to be aftercare. And that's not something that I think I am so frustrated by the fact that I wasn't ever given education on this, but I also, like I said, it's not something that I think I can hold against the healthcare system because I don't know if they know enough about the microbiome to give us that education that we should be more proactive about restoring our microbiome after we've been on antibiotics. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be giving them too much credit, but they don't work in isolation and you need to invest in aftercare if you are taking antibiotics. Concurrently and then post-care is so important. And I can do a whole episode on this. Honestly, I might, because I think it's something that I personally went through and I didn't know. I didn't know what I should be doing. I didn't know that I needed to do something. I think that's really what it is. It's not that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know I needed to be doing something. So that's the problem. We need to know more about this. And not only that, I mean, not to mention antibiotics, but just in general, all of our microbiomes are a hot mess given toxins and processed foods and sugar and so forth. So couple that with antibiotics and our gut health is devastated. So we need to be more aware of this. All right, next, asking myself the question, will this matter in 5 years? Will this matter in 1 year? Will this matter next week? Will this matter in a month? This one is hard. And I think we could all use this self-reflection a little bit more. But there's been a lot of things that have happened in life that I've had to kind of prompt these questions to myself. Will this matter down the road? Will this matter in 1 year? And that's not meant to invalidate or diminish your experience of something in the moment. It's not to say that what you're feeling right now is not still hard, but instead it gives you an opportunity to see it as temporary. It gives you an opportunity to see it as right now, this is hard and it won't last forever. Right now, this hurts. Right now, this is challenging. And in a year, it won't be as challenging or it'll be easier or I won't even remember about it. So it's a good way to put things in perspective because and I know for me personally, I've let a lot of things that have happened to me in my early 20s and through my 20s. And not only that, honestly, I could say in high school too. High school, even in middle school. Oh my God, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. I'm thinking about all these times where I got so caught up in something, which at the time, yes, it is valid. It was hurtful. It was upsetting. It was stressful. But if I gave myself the perspective and the ability to see beyond it, I think it probably would have made it a little bit less challenging for me because when you have perspective on in a year, this is not going to matter at all. It gives you a little bit more of okay, this is now and that's going to be then. And right now I just need to be with these emotions, but there's not like a forever to it, right? It's not going to last forever. So something to keep in mind. Will this matter in 5 years, 1 year? Well, will any of this matter? And being okay with how you feel in that moment. That's really huge. Okay, number 18. Just because it's for others doesn't mean it has to be for you. This is all about taking a non-conventional path. I definitely have always been on a non-conventional path. I feel as though I've always done it differently than what I saw my classmates and my peers doing. And I don't regret it at all, but I think for many years I wondered why I was doing things so differently and why it worked for me. And I still sometimes question it, but I think I felt like I was doing things wrong because I wasn't doing it by the book or by what majority of what others were doing at my age. And I still kind of feel that way, being at, community college and then working through community college and then transferring and commuting to Rutgers for my bachelor's degree and then going to TCNJ for my master's degree and still, working through that. And I don't know, I feel like I've always taken the road less traveled, I guess. And I've always just wondered why. I always just wondered, I just didn't do it the way. And then not only that, I quit the job that I was supposed to pursue in private practice to start my own business. I'm still bartending. There's just like a lot of things that I feel like I've done differently than what, say, like an average person, or at least what I saw everyone else doing. But just because it's for others, just because they're doing it a certain way doesn't mean that I have to too. And I have to remind myself of that. I'm grateful for the journey that I've had. I think it's been very confusing for me too, because it's almost felt like I was doing something wrong, I guess, because it wasn't super conventional, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I would not have it any other way. I'm so grateful to be doing what I'm doing and to be where I am. It just, took me a little bit to get here, and I'm still not there, where I want to be, but I'm just grateful for the ride. I think it's all happened for a reason, even if it was a little bit of a winding road. I'll put it that way. Number 19, stress is not glamorous. Okay, your girl still to this day works on hustle culture and being productive, and I think a lot of it is tied into some upbringing, and not just like an upbringing, just my productivity as a middle schooler and elementary student, the almost like the self-worth that was attached to it and so forth. So I don't want to get too much into that, but I need to constantly remind myself that stress is not glamorous, and adding more to your plate, biting off more than I can chew, is not the move from a mental and physical health perspective. And it's something that I need to work on constantly, but it's a big lesson that I've learned over the past 30 years. Just the fact that some stress, small bouts of stress, is healthy, is motivating, is productive, but pushing it too far and overwhelming ourselves and going without adequate rest or recovery. This is not just about productivity in work and school. This is about overdoing it with exercise and going too long without sleeping adequately, all of that. That's all stress in the body, as I mentioned before. So being stressed and having a lot going on is not glamorous if you're not giving yourself adequate time to recover. You're meeting that stress with adequate recovery and adequate downtime and self-care, and finding that healthy balance is critical. It's essential. It's a non-negotiable. Next, a workout is still valid even if you don't sweat. All right, this is me talking to Emily at 16, at 19, at 21, at 23. A workout is still valid even if you don't sweat. All right, your girl thought that a valid workout was contingent upon the amount that I sweat. So all of my workouts were high intensity. All of my workouts were forced for a forced sweat. Okay. So this is really important, right? That we're conscientious of the fact that workouts, no matter what they look like, are valid, and giving yourself the credit of doing it is more important than, getting, a certain calorie burn or sweating a certain amount. moving your body is never wasted, no matter what it looks like. Some days you're going to have more sweat. Other days it's going to be low impact, and that's just as nourishing and healing and productive for the body as are these more intensive workouts. And they're almost more productive because they're giving your body a chance to restore and rest. So a workout is still valid even if you don't sweat. Number 21, reading is your superpower. Reading is nourishment. Holy cow. If I could put this in bold and italics and make it a massive font in podcast form, I would do that. Okay. Reading has changed my life. How did I go so many years without reading? I want to know. Honestly, I might even tag on here podcasting too, or podcasts, not my podcast necessarily, but podcasts, listening to podcasts. Reading has changed my life. I don't know how I got away with so many years not reading. I love to read. I love to learn. I love to grow. I don't know how I went so long without reading. So shout out to reading. Shout out to books. Thank you for coming into my life. I love you. And I look forward to all the books that I will read in the future. Next, eating less is not more. How many years did I spend focusing on calories or eating less or thinking it was, the way to lose weight or the way to tone up? Eating less is not more. I eat more now than I've ever ate before, and I am the healthiest that I've ever been. So eating less is not more. Eating less can actually be really stressful. Actually, it is really stressful. It's not can be. It is very stressful on the body, and oftentimes it is counterproductive to the results that you're looking for. So eating less is not more. Exercising more is not the answer either. I'll tag onto this. Being sure you're eating enough and exercising in a moderate way, that is the best thing you can do for your health. The most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. This one is big, and I think I have continued to learn more about myself and my health and who I am, I would say, over the past several years, especially in the latter half of my 20s. But this is never not true. The most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. And I think that has really inspired my motivation to really invest in myself, both professionally, personally, and the practices that I incorporate on a daily basis for personal growth, for self-development. And not only that, just physical nourishment as well, moving my body, eating right, doing all these things because I know how pouring into myself is the key to having, having successful relationships otherwise, but also to living a full life is pouring into me first and foremost before I pour into anything else, because I am the most important. I am the most important in my life. Who I am, my mental health, my physical health is so important. So that, I think, is a lesson I continue to learn. I think it brings up a lot as well. I think it can be really hard for us as human beings to love ourselves and to, be able to pour into ourselves unconditionally because of past experiences. And I'm saying this generally. I'm not saying necessarily just for me. I know that this is very relevant to a lot of people. So it can be really hard for us to feel worthy of it. I came across this a lot with clients. Came across in a number of different settings with different clients in therapy, and then also now in the work that I do. And, it can be really hard for someone to confront that. It can be really hard for someone to feel they're worthy of taking care of themselves physically through nutrition and so forth. And so sometimes that comes up and that has to be worked through. So the most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. That will never not be the case. So I encourage you to consider this in your own life. Number 24, you can't spot treat your workouts. Cardio is not everything. I would spend hours on the treadmill or on the elliptical, and then I'd get off and do like a 5-minute ab circuit because I'd be so exhausted. That was all I could muster. And then I'd go home. The second that I started focusing on full body, upper body, lower body, core, all the things, is the second I actually saw complete change in my body composition. And not to mention, diversifying your movement is huge. I know I've shared a lot lately. I've been doing a lot of Pilates, which is a lot of body weight. I have dumbbells at home that are heavier weights. I do cycling, I walk. I do a lot of different types of movement. So my understanding of exercise has completely changed over the past, I would say, just 15 years. When I first started exercising, it was a lot of cardio, a lot of running on the treadmill. barely any weights at all. Then I transitioned more into running. I was running a lot in an unhealthy way. And then moving into my 20s, that's when I really started, probably mid 20s. That's when I really started to focus more on strength training. And since then, it's been a healthy evolution to where I am now. But it's changed dramatically. I was doing a lot of HIIT cardio. My poor joints are still paying for it. But I think this one kind of encompasses a couple different things. You can't spot treat your workouts. So stop trying to just build your butt, or just trying to, strengthen your core, get a six pack. Cardio is not everything. I know this to be true, and diversifying your workouts is one of the most effective things you can do for whole body health, to improve your cardiovascular function, to age more healthfully, to lose weight, to support a healthy blood sugar. The list goes on. So diversify your movements. You want lots of different strength, cardio, mobility, stretching. Switch it up. Find what works for you. This is the key to a sustainable, healthy relationship with exercise. Next, nothing changes if nothing changes. This one is a hard pill to swallow, I'm telling you. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I am such a routine, comfort zone person, and this has been to my detriment in a lot of ways over the course of the past, probably I'd say 10 years. And nothing changes if nothing changes. So nothing will change if you do not make some sort of change. If something is not different, it will remain the same. It will still generate the same outcome. So in order to make a change, and this goes in any area of life, health and wellness, but also personal life, professional life, whatever the case is, you have to do something different in order to generate a different outcome. This, I'll be honest, is something I continue to learn and I continue to work through in different areas of life, but this is one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the past several years, and I love this concept of nothing changes if nothing changes, because it's very straightforward, it's to the point, but it makes such complete sense. So, something to keep in mind. Number 26. Your cycle is one of the most important biomarkers you can look at. Now, I don't know if biomarker is the correct term, but it is one of the most important clues into our bodies as women, and we're just not educated enough on them. And I'll expand this by saying women's health is largely a mystery to our healthcare system. And unfortunately, we've been led to believe that we should be eating less and exercising more. And this is simply not the case. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of us are struggling and a lot of our health is compromised as a result of this very outdated and inappropriate narrative that we've kind of subscribed to. And not only that, I said our cycle speaks. So a lot about our period is kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's just not something that we're talking about enough. And I think when we do talk about, it's always equated to we need to be taking birth control. It's very simplified that if there's any kind of period related issues, birth control just has to be the solution. And this is just not the case. Not only does our cycle give us insights on what's going on inside the body, understanding, how our body's functioning from a hormonal standpoint, but it has a lot to do with our liver. It has a lot to do with our gut. There's a lot of, interconnectedness that takes place there. But I think not only as it relates to just our cycle in those phases of life that we are still actively getting our periods, it's perimenopause, it's menopause, and it's postmenopause that is such a mystery, and it's just a part of getting older. If you could see me right now, I'm putting that in quotes. And this is just so unfortunate. So if you are a woman, which I'd imagine you are, because a lot of my audience does identify as female, I encourage you, if you haven't yet heard me say this, to take your health into your own hands and look at your cycle. Your cycle is an indicator of dysfunction. It's going to tell you about what's going on inside the body. Is it regular? Is it painful? Learning more and using that as an opportunity to get to know yourself better and then get to know your health better, that is one of the best things that you can do. All right? This is so frustrating. So frustrating that we're so negligent of this. And I think it's one of the biggest downfalls or blind spots of our healthcare system. And when I say blind spot, I'm referring to almost the entirety of women's health, and that's just unacceptable. 27. Some of the worst things can turn into some of the best things. I am reflecting on certain things that happened in my life. I would say probably more in my late teens, early 20s. And at the time, they were earth-shattering for me. But I also then think about what took place as a result of those things. And they became some of the best things. So that is something that I always try to remind myself of, is when there are challenging times and things go wrong or things don't go as planned, there can be benefit, there can be beauty on the other side of it. And I think about other times in life where I went through really challenging, emotionally tolling, experiences. And in retrospect, you can see what took place, what unfolded as a result of that. And a lot of times there's good that can come, even if it's hard to see that in the moment. So that's something that I always remind myself of. Number 28, feel your feels. Feel your feels. One of the healthiest things we can do is feel our emotions. And there are many times in life where I was going through something challenging and I turned to food, I turned to exercise, I turned to alcohol, and I didn't allow myself really to feel the feels. And now as a 30-year-old, I think that is one of the most productive things that we can do, especially coming from someone who's a background in mental health. But, allowing ourselves to be patient with the emotions that don't feel good, just as we would celebrate the things that do feel good. We need both of those. We need that dichotomy, that kind of polarity that's there of, feeling the negative emotions, not the bad emotions, the negative emotions, just as fully as we do the, positive, more joyful emotions. That allows us to appreciate the fullness of life. Not only that, but just, get through something as opposed to pushing away from it or going above it or going under it. You have to go through it, because otherwise it's going to show up in other places. And I'm a big believer of the impact that emotional suppression can have on the body, right? When we're suppressing emotions, we're just pushing them down. They're still there and they're still going to show up somewhere else. So feeling your feels. I myself qualify as a very emotional person. I've kind of learned that about myself over the years, that I feel as though I feel emotions more strongly. I just have, I guess I have a vulnerability or susceptibility to, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, emotional, what's the word? What is the word? Emotional, I don't want to say tolerance. I don't know. I feel like I have a sensitivity to it. I have a stronger sensitivity to it. So that said, feeling the feels definitely can be more challenging, but I know it's more productive to do that. Number 29, symptoms are messages. This is something you've heard me say plenty of times before, so forgive me for being repetitive. But the second that we're able to look at our symptoms as the way the body communicates with us, as opposed to these issues that are frustrating, are debilitating, are painful, is the second that we start to become more of an investigator of our health and our body. Now, that's not to say that we can't still feel frustrated or annoyed or irritated or discouraged by them. That's not the case at all. But if we look at them as more of a way that our body's communicating with us, we can then use those insights, those clues, to better understand how to proceed and where to look. This is one of the big things I'm learning in my work with the functional diagnostic nutrition program, is really using symptoms as clues to determine what type of testing needs to be done as a result. Because the only way that we can really understand the body is through this communication system, is through these symptoms. This at least allows us to narrow down things a little bit. Now, obviously, symptoms like fatigue and so forth are pretty vague. Those can be indicative of something, of many, many different things, but at the very least, it's still a symptom. And if we're not having symptoms and there's something going on, we're not going to be able to identify it and prevent it from progressing or getting to the root cause of it. So giving some grace and practicing gratitude for your symptoms is possible, even while feeling frustrated and upset by them. We can do both at the same time, because it's not about invalidating your experience and, saying you shouldn't be feeling this way, that you shouldn't be feeling frustrated or upset or, whatever emotion might be there. It's about acknowledging them as being clues for you to better understand your body and your health. And number 30, you are in control of your life. This kind of sums up a lot of what I've been sharing throughout the list of the 30 things I've learned in 30 years. But I have not felt so strongly about this more than the way I've felt in the past year, I would say, knowing that the choices that I make and the decisions I make are up to me. I can change things that I'm not happy with. I can change things that I don't want to do. I can change things to create a different future. That goes for relationships. That goes for careers. I'm in control of my life. Now, I want to obviously give the caveat and say that there's a lot of things that can happen in life that are outside of our control. But for the large majority of the time, I can make choices and I can make changes if I feel as though something is no longer serving me, or I feel like I've outgrown something, or it's not getting me to where I want to be. I have full authority in making a change and doing something differently. It's about responding differently. And like I said before, nothing changes if nothing changes. So I can't sit there and do the same things and feel frustrated that I'm not getting different results. I have to do something different. And that's where, taking control of your life is so important. I think too many of us just go through the monotony and the routine of life, and life just passes us by. And we're kind of always living at this subpar state. And this goes for our health. I think we live in a space of subclinical symptoms, or we live feeling subpar because we think that that's it, or we just don't feel like we want to do anything about it, where we're living at a solid 5, where we could be feeling better and living more at a 9 or a 10. So that goes for health, but also just in general. We accept the comfort zones, we accept the routine, and there's so much more to life. And I think I've really felt that, especially moving into 30, how I want to move forward and I want to grow and I want to build and I want to evolve and I want to do more with my life and my health and my business. And that requires action. That requires me to do something, because no one else is going to come in and do that for me, which is a big reason why I completed my Pilates certification and I enrolled in school all within a matter of 24 hours, because I said, you know what? The time is now. The time is now. I want to make a change. I want to grow. I want to be somewhere else. I have visions. I have goals. I have plans for myself, and those things are not going to happen. Those things will not manifest if I myself do not take action. So this is a good way to wrap this list up. I intentionally put this in number 30 because I want to end on a strong note, and I could definitely continue with this. I could continue with so many other reflections, but I intentionally did it this way, where I did some more lighthearted ones, but then also health and wellness ones, and then life-related ones, because I think it is a well-rounded conversation around all the things that I've learned, even if it doesn't cover all of them. These are some of the more prevalent ones, and I'm just excited. I think, there's only more to learn, more to grow, more to evolve, and I'm excited for a new decade and a new year. I love how my birthday lines up with New Year's, because I feel like I enter a new age and then I also enter a new year. So it's like double the energy, double the motivation. Even though for many years I really hated having a birthday so close to Christmas, but I've moved on from that. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I appreciate you. I hope that this brought you value, maybe gave you some food for thought to reflect on, and I will see you next time you join my table. And in the meantime, be well.